Hi, this is Robyn Thompson, and this is the Sign to Voice portion of my NAD application. Here we go. I have a confession to make. My memory's not that great. I don't remember everything from when I was growing up. But I do depend on something to help me to remember. And here's what that tool is: movies. My mom will sometimes say, "Do you remember that one time when you were 12? We went to that restaurant and you threw up?" And I say, "No, I don't remember when I was 12 and I threw up." But she'll say, "Oh, do you remember we went to the movies, we saw that 3D movie, and then you got sick and threw up?" And I'll say, "Yes, I do remember." And so I use movies to help me remember memories from my life. And I also remember that when I was growing up, my mom and I would always go to the movies. And this was back in the day when caption wasn't provided. And we would sit and watch the big screen. And you would think as a child I'd be restless sitting in the dark theater, but I wasn't. I was fascinated seeing the lights and the camera shots and seeing how everything was controlled. I was amazed to see all of these pictures and everything come together to tell a story. That was incredibly powerful for me. And there's one movie that really stuck up that I will remember for always, and that movie is E.T. Who's seen E.T.? Raise your hand. Yeah, seems like just about everybody's seen E.T. This was a good one. This was the first movie that I actually remember going to. And I sat there with my mom and we were all excited and the movie's going on, and I remember at the end I cried and I couldn't sleep that night, and my mom tried to console me, but I wasn't consolable. I kept thinking about E.T. And there was one scene that really struck me. Do you guys remember the opening scene? It was at night and it was in the woods and there's lights coming down from overhead and the trees are blowing all around and you can see that there's something in the woods. And then there's another shot of all of these trucks pulling up together and you see the headlights and a man steps out of the truck and the camera goes and shows him stepping out of the truck, and all you see is this keychain. You don't see the man's face, you just see his keys and his keychain. And there's no real description as to who this man is or what, but he tries to catch the alien in the woods, and eventually the alien escapes into the city. And the movie goes on, and there's a shot with the kids on the bike, and at the very end, E.T. gets sick, and he is taken to the children's home, and he's in the bathroom, and he's getting ready to die. The boy's holding E.T., and he's crying, and he takes him outside, and outside, police are there, NSA is there, and then there's another shot of the truck with a man stepping out. And it's the same scene of you see this guy's keys and you never see his face. You don't know what he is or why he's doing there. But I just thought it was interesting that the opening scene and the closing scene showed this guy, and you automatically knew that he was a bad guy. And so from that moment on, I knew I wanted to be involved with film. I wanted to take pictures, put them together to make a story. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's where my journey began. Flash forward in my life to another time. I was at Gallaudet as a film major. And I had a professor named Facundo who's unfortunately passed away. He's hearing. He wasn't proficient in sign language, but had a good attitude and was able to sign somewhat. And so we're going in class, the semester's going along, and there was one particular project that really struck me. Visual expression. And all along I just thought it was, how you're telling a story through scenes and everything. But it seemed like the teacher at Gallaudet had a hard time explaining what he wanted us to do. He said, "I want you guys to express yourself. Say something about yourself." And I'm thinking in my head, what do you mean exactly? So remember, he's hearing. And he had a similar project that he had to do back in his day when he was in college. And so he showed us his presentation, which was a little dull. It was, close-up shots of him, trees blowing, him mowing the lawn, a fire, a man running, stuff like that. And I just, okay, that's a little odd, but if that's your self-expression, then that's what it is. Also, his project had sound, and that was to sort of expand upon his life. And so keep in mind that we're a deaf audience, but he said he wanted us to come up with our own self-expression, not to copy what he did, but to come up with our own. And so it seemed like he couldn't find the right word to express himself, to, tell us exactly what he wanted from us. Anyway, I completed the project, turned it in, did a pretty good job, and that was that. But that experience with that teacher in that class always stuck with me. Afterward, I transferred to RIT, where I had a minor in technology, took lots of different courses on cameras, lenses, 50 millimeter lenses, 30 millimeter lenses. I also learned about lights, and, you have to have 3 lights, and you can do this, and you can't do that, and I never dreamed that they had a course like that would teach you all of these different intricate aspects of cinematography. And something that really struck with me, film language, movies have language. I mean, it's not like a packet that's passed out with a fancy staple on the top. No, this is an actual book. And there's tons of dense content in there. Here's an example. Close-up, medium shot, wide shot. Are you guys familiar with this term? Well, I'll explain. Wide shot is sort of to tell a story. So maybe it's an opening scene and you can see the trees and you can see a house. Maybe there's a guy with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Next is a medium shot. You can see the trees and you can see the man a little bit closer and he's rolling his cigarette. And then a close-up shot will be just to show the chest and the face. And the reason for that is to show emotional impact, to show the intensity of that moment. And so, there's all different types of shots and things like that to portray pictures in a movie. They sometimes will even use cranes. And so as I was reading this book, I really felt like it didn't match me. Here's another example. For example, movies and on the news, maybe you'll see a little boy, he's hungry, and they'll have a voiceover saying, unfortunately this boy's parents have passed away. The statistics in this country are terrible. It's a disimpoverished country, and it'll show another picture of the boy and he's hungry. And so showing the picture and having the voiceover it's a representative of this specific type of movie making. And here are some more examples. And as you can see, there's a lot of information to learn. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to be learned about movie making and scripts. There's a bit about when you have a script, you have the opening, and then you have a conflict, which gets worse and worse and worse. And, the characters have to survive and go through all of this conflict and strife, and then, there's a happy resolution, a happy ending, if you will, which is typically an American thing. We always have a happy ending in America. There's also rules, like guidelines that you have to follow, which are highly encouraged. Here are some of those rules. And so there's a few deaf people in this class at RIT, and we are ready. We want to learn all of the new rules and all the new vocabulary and everything and figure out how to structure ourselves so that we can make a deaf film, which would be the first in RIT. So as we as deaf people use American Sign Language, and as we were trying to make this project, we were going along and say, oh, no, you can't, we can't use that scene cut because your hand was out of the screen. We have to do it again. And I said to the director, no, I'd like to challenge that. If our hand does go out of scene during a close-up, I think it's okay because people will still be able to understand me. At least that's what I believe. Let me give you a sample of my work. There are two interesting things about this. This was screened for a general audience when I was a freshman, when I was full of fresh ideas and was excited to use the camera and thought I could conquer the world. And the audience was impressed. And I, as a member of this audience, watched the movie, and I felt like there was something missing. I felt like it wasn't natural, that this wasn't an actual representation of my world. This is a representation of a different world that's not my own. The second point was, why did they have a telephone? They're deaf, which was my mistake. I just didn't think about it. So those were two interesting things from this movie. And I really struggled with this project because I wanted to follow the rules and the language and restructure everything the way it's supposed to, but it just didn't feel natural. This was not a representation of my world on the big screen. Something was lacking. Next topic is film language. And with that concept of film language, I felt very limited. Like I was sort of put into a box with all this restructuring and everything. So I decided to put that on hold. There's so many rules with film language and traditions and things like that, and you have to consider sound. All movies have sound, and there's all sorts of ways to manipulate the sound to get the desired effect that you want for the story. But as a deaf person, I am visual. Sound doesn't even come up on my radar, which means I had to think about how to show my world, how to show my world in my own way. Next topic is script. You guys know what a script is? It's a type of writing for movies where you indent and you have a colon and you say, you know, the character does this, 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 and this. And it's typically written in English, which is hard for me because ASL is my first language. Now, I'm not saying that I can't write English, but it is a bit of a struggle for me because ASL is my first language. Maybe you're familiar with Bernard Bragg. Ben Bon, they're both instructors at ASL, at Gallaudet. And they made a point to say that ASL does have cinematic value, which was new information for me. And ASL is able to translate and have cinematic value. Is it exactly the same as a hearing English-based written script? No, but it's similar. I feel like ASL goes beyond what a script is able to do. So I decided to get rid of that idea and developed a whole new concept called an ASL script. I would set up a camera and film myself signing, and so this was the result of that experiment. This was my first attempt at an ASL script, and I did not do this alone. I had a large team working with me, people with different skill sets, people that knew acting coaches, people that were good at cinema photography. We had a very diverse skill group in this team, and we sort of went off the cuff, and this was a result of what that experiment looked like. I feel like this is the way of the future for as far as ASL scripts go, because it's more visual and you can see the imagination in there. And when deaf people watch this, they're able to easily understand it. So I feel like this is definitely something that needs a little more research. The next topic that I'd like to discuss is camera flow. And maybe some of you are thinking that means to edit something. You have a scene where someone is talking and then the camera swings to the other side and catches the next person talking. That could be called editing.